Roar!
Family Reunion by Anonymous Pegasus. Daring Do stepped down the driveway towards a large cottage with an awkward, hesitant gait. The sun was still high overhead, the afternoon light playing across the trees and grassy lawn in front of the cottage, highlighting a sparrow as it flitted from one perch to another, chirping its happy song. The young yellow Pegasus minced back and forth slightly as she tried to gain the composure to walk up and knock on the closed cottage door. It had been almost a year since she had been here, a year spent out traveling Equestria and beyond, digging up treasures and archaeological wonders the likes of which the world had never seen. From the largest spire in the world to the Rosetta Stone, Daring Do had seen it and done it all. But there was still a twinge of fear and hesitancy as she stared at the door to the cottage. She could dodge wild animals, swing from ropes, raid trap-filled ancient temples and fight twisted, evil opponents. But she was still scared of what her family would say. After all, she hadn't exactly left them on the best of terms. Her mother had never really had the disposition to be a treasure hunter. One look at her and it was obvious that she wasn't going to be a fierce warrior or a fearless adventurer. She was a wonderful housewife, and before their father had passed away, she had been the perfect wife. She had raised her kids in a loving environment, given them everything they could ever want, and while her youngest had taken after their mother, her eldest daughter, Daring, had gone a completely different route. But she had never been able to understand Daring's love for adventure and treasure. Of course, she was well known for all her different jobs. She had done it all, from a baker to a botanist, a carpenter to a milkmare. Daring was certain that she would have gone through another several different types of jobs while she was away. But that was the problem. Daring hadn't exactly left with permission. Daring was old enough to leave the house and strike out her own. But she felt a tug at her heart to stay with her mother. A lot of people felt a certain endearance to her mother, who, despite her faults, was most definitely a very likable mare. And her mother had wanted her to stay home and help her build a business, a bakery, she had said. Daring had wanted to help. Oh, how she had wanted. But if she had railroaded into a career as a baker, then her treasure hunting days would be over before they even began. And so, one night, Daring Do had slipped out of the window and headed off to start her adventures. So long had passed since then that she was sure her mother would forgive her. But it was still scary. There was no way to predict how the happy-go-lucky mare would react to having her runaway child return. Taking a deep breath, Daring Do strode up to the door to the cottage, and then lifted a hoof to knock on it. Voices echoed from inside, making her pause. "A spoonful of the special syrup, and we can put them in the oven," her mother was saying enthusiastically, giggling. "Mama, can we put in 2 whole spoonfuls?" came the squeak from Daring's younger sister, whom had been a foal when she'd left. Daring Do swallowed hard past the sudden lump in her throat and leaned sideways to look at her reflection in the dusty window beside the door, straightening her jacket up and then removing her safari hat, placing it on the ground next to the door as she began to adjust her mane. The blurry figures inside shifted slightly, and she heard her mother say, "Wait a second, honey, there's someone at the door." Realizing that she had been spotted, Daring resisted the urge to leap behind the bushes out front and hide, and swallowed hard to compose herself, straightening up and standing there nervously as footsteps approached the door. The door swung open and a grey head inquisitively poked out, yellow eyes widening as they caught sight of Daring. "Hi, Mom," Daring Do said uncertainly, giving a strained smile. Ditsy Do stared for the longest time, jaw dropped, her eyes looking in 2 different directions as they often did. Daring Do was just starting to get uncomfortable when Ditsy basically pounced on her, wrapping her hoofs around the yellow mare and squeezing her so tight that she began to cough faintly. "Mom! Mom! You're strangling me!" Daring protested, pushing half-heartedly at her mother with her hoofs. Ditsy loosened her hold and drew back from the other mare, her eyes tearing slightly as she whispered, "You came back." "Of course I came back, Mom," Daring soothed, lifting a hoof to gently touch the side of her mother's neck in a show of affection.
"Mama, who's this?"
asked the young unicorn filly from somewhere around her mother's hind legs.
"This is your big sister,"
Ditsy said with a broad smile, pointing at Daring.
"Say hi, Dinky." "Hi, big sister,"
the filly chirped, waving a hoof enthusiastically.
"Are you going to help us make muffins?" I'd love to,"
Daring said with a nod, looking to her mother for guidance. Ditsy nodded once, jerking her head towards the kitchen. Awkwardly, Daring stepped inside and closed the door behind her, ruffling her wings and then folding them tight to her sides, looking about. Everything was exactly the way it had been when she left, save the pictures on the mantel. The pictures had changed. When she had left, there were pictures dominated by a broad-chested earth pony, Ditsy's husband, and the pictures of the entire family together. Now there was a single picture of the earth pony, old and faded, while the rest were pictures of a younger Daring Do and a baby Dinky Do.
"So, what have you been doing with yourself, Daring?"
Ditsy asked as she wandered back into the kitchen, with Dinky bounding along behind her eagerly.
"I've been, chasing treasure,"
she replied lamely, scratching at the side of her head with a hoof.
"Have you found any?"
her mother asked, raising a brow back at her as she showed Dinky how to put the muffins in the oven safely. Daring had a flashback to when Ditsy had showed her the exact same thing.
Yeah, Mom, I did,"
Daring managed to reply past the lump in her throat. Ditsy lifted a hoof to rest on Daring's foreleg and stared into her daughter's eyes with a soul-piercing look. Even her off-center eyes weren't enough to lessen the effect.
"Are you happy?" "Yeah, Mom, I'm really happy,"
Daring assured, lifting one of her own hoofs to rest over her mother's.
"Good enough for me,"
Ditsy declared with a grin, turning and closing the oven. She then turned and began to head for the lounge room, motioning for Daring to follow.
"Now come, sit. Tell me of your adventures. I feel like you've got a lot to tell me."
Daring Do looked back over her shoulder at her waving and smiling mother and sister, lifting her own hoof to wave in farewell. Daring was off in search of her next treasure, with a pouch full of muffins and a smile on her face. Ditsy was erratic, clumsy, and often crazy. She was the exact opposite of everything that Daring was. But she was her mother, and Daring loved her. Hello everyone, this is Visual Pony from Pony&Wolf Productions, and I thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this video. At this point, I want to thank all of our amazing patrons on Patreon for supporting this channel with their monthly donations and keeping the lights on around here. Now, more than ever, it is important that you support your favorite content creators, because due to YouTube's new content policy changes, we, along with other content creators, had to demonetize a lot of our most profitable videos. For us, those are the Fallout Equestria stories. As you can see on the graph on screen right now, our earnings per video used to be relatively okay, even though the earnings were never enough for a viable career. It was enough for a good, decent side income. Now we are struggling to pay our bills. If you want to support us for as little as $1 a month, you can do so by clicking on our Patreon link down in the description below. And you can get wonderful perks like, for example, early access to all of our stuff. Sometimes things like this are recorded months in advance. Voice acting lessons from me or Midnight, if you really want to. And you can join our Patreon Discord server. Even though it may look like there's not much going on in there, I am actually checking it on the daily. Thank you for listening to this message, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day.